How'd that sound going past you? I've been working on my bow, trying to get it ready. So I think I'm going to run out and just maybe talk you through some things I'm thinking about right now. You're only as accurate as your marks or where your pin is. I had a professional archer tell me that one time. He's like, you can be the best shot in the world, but if your pin or your sight marks are not accurate, they're not set up, you're not going to do that well. Sometimes it might take me a week to shoot my individual pins in. Looks like I need a little right click, huh? I'm just going to show you some tips and tricks on how I'm going to ensure that my bow is absolutely dialed and that I'm completely confident in it when I do actually show up at the trailhead and go hunting. Scott, did you hear me? This series is going to break down the individual steps that I think you need to take to find success, because that's the ultimate goal. And there's nothing like finding success in the elk woods every September. So come along with this. We're going to include a bunch of information that's going to help shorten your learning curve and help you tag out later this fall. All right, guys, so you want to make sure that your bow is completely dialed before you head out on your hunt. As part of that process for me is I want to make sure that my bow is tuned first and foremost. So I'm going to go immediately to paper tune. I've got my bow built out. I've got my arrows built up and set. What I'm going to do is go through and paper tune each individual arrow. If there's an issue with one arrow, maybe it's not getting a clean tear, I can then turn a nock, potentially a nock tune, to get that arrow to tune correctly. So when you're paper tuning, you want to be about 5 to 6 feet from the target. If you get any further back, I think it's good to check multiple distance, so there's no harm in checking what your paper tear looks like at 9 feet or 12 feet. But once you get beyond that, your vanes are going to start to correct the flight of that arrow. And what you're really checking for is to ensure that that arrow is coming, perfectly out of the bow. So it's about 6 feet. What I typically do, I'm about 6'1", so I figure, my height distance from the target. You want to kind of shoot at shoulder height, execute a good shot, just get into your grip, go through all your shot process just like you would any other arrow, and just shoot an arrow through paper and see what the tear tells you. So I'm just going to shoot an arrow here, see what it tells me. Hopefully it's in tune, or that'll be embarrassing. That's what you're looking for, so that'll do. I've done my job. So you can see I have a perfect bullet hole right through the middle. I've got the 4 vanes coming off. That's as clean as a tear as I can produce. So I would, like I said, I would go through and I would do this for each individual arrow, but right now I know that that arrow is coming out of my bow true. Now, when you're paper tuning, let's say that you get a tear where the point is here and the nock is tearing to the left. For right-handed shooter, most of us, that would mean you would move your rest closer to the riser, so to the right. So a left paper tear, nock left, move your rest closer to the riser, to the right. You get a right tear coming this way, opposite. You would move your rest away from your riser. Up and down, if you think about that arrow going through paper, so if you got a hole that comes through and you've got the vanes that are up here, you can imagine this, just think it through. You would lift your rest up so that the point is starting to match the back half of the arrow. Same thing if you've got a hole that reflects this, you get the point coming through here, the back half is low, you would want to lower your rest so that you're leveling out that arrow as it's coming out. So there's lots of paper tuning guides online. If you do a little Google search, there's different diagrams that'll show you how to paper tune. There's a lot of different tinkering that you can do, whether it's top hats, but primarily it's your rest. You're looking at your rest. If everything else is set up, your cams are timed, you're mostly looking at your rest and your nock height. So that's what we're looking for. Next step, I'm going to jump back. I'm going to lay a piece of tape across the target. I'm just going to show you how to sight in an individual pen. My next step is going to be actually sighting in my individual pens. And like I said earlier, you're only as good as your mark. So if your pens are inaccurate, it's not good. You want to have really precise set pens. I'm going to run you through that process. Typically for me, what I'll do is I'll take a piece of tape like this that I can see really well. I'll clip out a stretch that I can accurately hit. So if it's 20 yards, maybe I want an inch or so. I get back to 40 yards, maybe my group's going to open up a little bit. I might want to, put half of that distance. And what I want to do is I want to lay that in across the target on a horizontal plane. The reason I'm not worried about, hitting a spot to sight in my 40 or 50 or 60 yard pin is because I want to be able to take my mind off of hitting a spot, and I really want to just focus on the elevation. I can walk the left and right in the same way I do horizontally, but I like to start with the horizontal plane. So what I'll do is I'll take a piece of tape, I'll lay it on the target, and I will shoot each and every distance until all my arrows are hitting the exact same plane horizontally. That way I know that my pins are set. After that, I can do the exact same thing. I can take a stretch of tape, I can lay it vertically, and I can do like a walk back tune, or I can just simply, work on my individual, pins left to right. So when you're sighting in your individual pins, what I like to do is start with if I'm shooting a multi-pin sight, I like to start with my middle pin. So it might be 40 yards. The reason I want to do that is because I want to put that 40-yard pin close to the center of the housing. I want to kind of set my peep height for that because it's a pretty common distance when I'm hunting elk. So I'm going to set my peep to that. I want to sight my 40-yard pin, and then I'm going to move my individual pins, my 30-yard pin up or down, depending on where it's hitting, 20 up or down, and then, my 50 and 60 and kind of work that route. So I like to start with the middle pin. I'm just going to lay a piece of tape, so I'm going to give you an idea. I'm going to assume that I've got my 40-yard pin sighted in. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of tape here. Again, something that you can see. If I'm trying to sight my 20-yard pin in, I want it to be reflective of kind of my shooting ability. So if it's too wide, of course I can hit it. So I just want it to be something that's like, a decent width that I think I can hit. So I'm going to lay that in right on the middle of this line here, this target. Normally I like to do this on a blank target. So if I have a blank face, I like that just because all I can see is the green. But I'm going to lay that in. I'm going to step back to 20 yards, fire an arrow, see how close to that line. If I shoot and my field tip hits high, I'm going to chase my miss. So I would have to move that pin up. If I shoot and I miss low, I'm going to have to move that individual pin down. That's kind of how it goes. Same thing left and right. If you miss right, you're going to chase to the right with your whole gang adjustment. You miss left, you're going to chase the whole gang of your sight to the left. So that's how that works. Let's step back to 20 yards. We'll take aim at this horizontal line and just see where my pin's at. All right, so when you're sighting in your pins or your sight in general, a lot of us have local archery ranges and they're marked with the yardages. Don't necessarily trust those. Make sure that you use the rangefinder that you plan on using on your hunt to sight in your pins. It's not uncommon for different rangefinders to get different ranges. I was at TAC last week with Lorenzo. His rangefinder and my rangefinder are about a yard or two off consistently across all distances. If I took his yardage all the time, I'd be missing. So sight in your pins and your sight specific to your rangefinder that you plan on hunting with. So I walked it back. I'm at 20 yards. I've got my sight kind of set where I think it's going to be. Basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to fire an arrow. I would also tell you when you're sighting in your pins and your sight, don't go off of one arrow. Shoot groups. So groups are going to tell you the story much better than an individual arrow. Ideally, you're going to know if it was a good arrow or not. I think we all kind of know if we hit behind the pen. But shoot groups. And like I said, when I'm leading up to a hunt, I might spend a week shooting in my individual pins. Take time to sight your pins in. I can't stress it enough. I can't even see the lines in here. So like I said, I'm going to shoot groups. I'll shoot 3 arrows. Hopefully that just didn't blow through that target and into the back wall. It sounded a little rough. Here's 2. We'll shoot 1 more. And then we'll go inspect our results. Check the tape. Like I said, I like this horizontal tape because you can basically line it up, especially if you've got horizontal pins that come from the side. You can line that tape up with your horizontal pins. You're not really focusing so much on a spot as you are just the horizontal. So let's go check, see what the tape looks like, get an idea on whether I need to move my pen up or down. Yeah. So you can see I've got 3 arrows. I'm about 1 inch high. So I'm going to need to go into my housing. I'm going to need to move my individual pen up. So I know that I need to move my 20-yard pen up, and I would just keep shooting groups until I get all of these arrows hitting right on that line. Next step for me, I'm going to break out a broadhead. I'm going to shoot some broadheads, just see how they hit with my field tips. This is probably one of the #1 question I get asked every single year. Why don't my field tips hit with my broadheads? Well, it could be a variety of issues, but the thing I can tell you is that you should be able to tune your rest to ensure that your broadheads are going to hit with your field tips. And this is like a common misconception. A lot of people, what they'll do is they will move their sight, try to chase their field points with their broadhead, so they'll move their sight. Reality is you need to move your rest the direction that your broadheads are missing. Okay, so it seems counterintuitive, but essentially your broadheads are telling you a lot about the tune on your bow. So if my broadheads are hitting low right, okay, of my field tips, I want to move my field tips towards that broadhead incrementally. Okay, and what's going to end up happening is that field tip and the broadhead will start to come together and hit. The ultimate goal by moving your rest is to get your field points and your broadheads hitting together. And it's a minute amount that's going to have an impact on your broadheads because there's a lot more surface area, okay? Once you get those hitting together, your field tips and your broadheads, you can then move your sight back to where you can walk both groups, field tips and broadheads, into the center of your target. Okay, so don't worry about your sight, worry about your rest, worry about your tune. That's what your broadheads are telling you. They're telling you about the tune of your bow. Okay, so chase your broadheads with your rest. So I got a broadhead on. This is the Sever Hybrid 1.5, so it's got the extra blades here, the cut-on contact blades at the end, and you got the expandables. One thing is when you're broadhead tuning and you want to make sure that your broadheads are flying with your field tips, I'd suggest shooting your broadhead first so that you're not cutting your vanes off and destroying your other arrows. Just a little tip. So with that, I'm going to step back. I'm actually going to shoot at this buck right here. I'm at 30 yards. Again, the further you go, the more confidence you'll have in your broadheads. So let's just see what it does. Take a look. That's a 12. So I feel pretty good about it. We'll shoot a field tip just to see. And again, I would go through this process of shooting groups of field tips and broadheads, shoot my broadheads at every distance. There's nothing that gives you more confidence than having a broadhead that hits middle, out to 80, 90, 100 yards. So take the time. It's fun to shoot your bow anyway, but like I said, there's the vote of confidence that you get from shooting your bow, shooting your broadheads that you just can't get anywhere else. It's such a good feeling to know that those things are tuned and ready to go when you head into the field. So I got a field tip right here. Let's shoot one of those just to see what it looks like. But I'm really happy with my broadhead on that first arrow. A little left, a little right, maybe. I think ideally, like if I were doing this again, I would probably put a spot up on that buck where my target so that I can see it, like I have a good aiming reference point. But yeah, not bad. I'm happy with those two. I would just keep shooting them. I mean, those are both 12s, opposite ends of the dot. But for, first time shooting a broadhead, I'm pretty happy with that. I would just keep shooting this. So I'd shoot at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, probably even out to 100 just to ensure. So that kind of puts me on the road, and that's kind of it for this episode. Next one, we'll kind of dive into some of the more preparation I'm doing as far as equipment goes, making sure that my equipment's taken care of. Things like, wearing your boots, checking your insoles in the boots. A couple of years ago, I went on a hunt, had a set of factory insoles, and my feet were absolutely smoked. It's just like a minor detail, but I'm going to dig into some of the things that you may not think about. Charging your battery packs, charging your headlamps, making sure that your phone is completely charged before you leave the trailhead. So those kinds of things we'll run through these. Hopefully you found some value in this one. Once again, please subscribe. We would love that. Give us a like. If you got more comments or questions, drop those below. Be happy to answer those. But get your gear together. It's time to go hunting.